Hi, this is Tate, the Black Bear Prepper. Today we're going to be talking about prepping for catching small game. Okay, now everybody says, well, I'll be able to go out there and hunt and things like that. Well, we live in an urban area where hunting is not always an option because of the reason that we're dealing with the idea of hunting small game, and you want to be more effective. So you want to be able to put yourself in multiple areas. So I'm not saying don't hunt, I'm just saying hunt, trap, snare, whatever you can to get yourself as much food as you can as possible. And especially you're going to have to start canning that food because in the wintertime a lot of these animals go away and it's hard to find them. One thing we wanted to talk about was pinch traps versus humane traps. And these are the ones from Harbor Freight and havahart traps. You know, these are more of the thing we're going to talk a little bit about why I don't like for prepping wise the pinch traps. A couple things right off the bat. So we're going to start out with this one here. This guy is your standard, you could get a squirrel if you got, you put your bait right here in the top and then catch them in the head. You could use it as a pinch trap on their leg or something like that for a smaller, little bit bigger game. I'm going to take it. These have little hooks, and little, old school way of doing it. Put them in the ground or you hook them around a tree. I like taking a stake, like a 10 stake, and staking them down to the ground. These guys have the problem of they can hurt you as well as the animal. So think about that. Not only while you're setting them, but also as you're trying to clean them up and things like that. If they've got, you can allot them as they get bigger and bigger. Some of them will have jaws on them to break bones and things on bigger animals. But the biggest problem you have is, let's say you're trying to set it and you stick your hand in there, accidentally bump the pressure plate, and that guy smacks around there. Now, one thing I want to show you guys is this smaller one isn't too bad. You just dented the bone. Now, that could break a finger. And a broken finger could put you out of work the rest of the time. Maybe a couple weeks where you're not able to use that hand to do what you need to keep your family alive. Now, as we get up into these guys, you can't even do these with your hands. You actually have to put both feet on both sides. You're going to press down and then set your stick. Well, you have a foot slip off. You're trying to set it, you think it's set, you put your hand back, you're going to bait it. All those things could cause that thing to go off. And again, these guys, as they get up into this stage with the dual springs, are going to start breaking fingers, break a hand, bust up the bones in your hand. You have a toe slip in there while you're doing it, or it catches you in the foot. All those, and as they get bigger and bigger and bigger, you have more risk of breaking bones. So something I kind of disagree with. The other problem I have with them is, one, they tend to make the food taste bad. A lot of trappers use these, and you'll see a lot of people out there that are trapping for furs. They'll use them because the reason that they're going to use them for fur. They're not going to eat the meat. But when you stress out your meat, it causes the adrenaline to flow, and the meat tends to be tougher. So it tends not to taste as good. So these, again, mattering how long it's been in that trap, it's in there all night long, a lot of times you'll lose the animal because of that. The other thing is, if it kills them and lets it set all day long, maybe it's out in the sun or whatever, that animal just sits there and rots there until you get there. And if it's hot outside, sometimes that meat can go bad in just a couple hours. Let's say it's, you're doing your trapping lines, you're coming back around, that animal's dead because it got pinched in the head, or it bled to death because it hit an artery when it popped their paw or their, around their neck and things like that. So I do not like killing the animals before I decide I want to kill them. So that's one of the problems I have with these guys. So we're going to kind of get rid of these guys because, like I said, and the other problem is they tend to break bones. And if it's, let's say it's a dog or a cat that got in there, you break your dog's leg, that dog has to be put down because there's nothing we can do about it because we don't have the medicines, things like that to keep them going. And if you break your hand, very easily, you start breaking the skin, you're just going to start dealing with, all kinds of different things. We're going to start out with a small trap, which I think everybody should have a few of. I don't like these as well as I do some of the other ones, some of the bigger traps here that we have. And these are made by Harbor Freight, or they're made in China and then shipped over here from Harbor Freight. Things I really like about the Harbor Freight traps over the havahart or other brands out there. These guys fold flat. So you take these little bars, and now I've got this one zip tied down. But you take this little bar, and the same thing on the big one, you flip the bar up, and the whole trap folds flat. So they're really easy to store, 5 or 6 of them stacked up. And like I said, the more traps you have, the better chance you have. This particular guy has the little brackets on the front. You push down on the brackets, you lift it up. We're going to flip our trigger bar around, and you want to come up here. It's kind of hard to see here, and I know this is kind of hard. We're going to stick our trigger bar through the front, and we're going to take a piece of apple with a little bit of peanut butter on there, on that little hook right there. So the little hook that's down in there, and that's kind of something to think about. Now, I have flipped the bar around backwards so the hook is facing backwards. Now, that also makes it easier for the bait to come off, but it makes them have to pull at the food instead of coming around the outside here and bumping it. I want them to have to pull the food this way, and the reason for that is because how this trap is set off is the bar actually has to go backwards, which is why I do not like this trap as well as I do some of the other traps out there with just the foot pressure. So when the bar travels backwards, you're going to, boom, the spring's going to lock down. The locks in the front are going to keep the trap from opening, and you're going to have to mess with those because a lot of times they get bent up as you're using it, and you want to keep the trap from being able to be pushed open by a squirrel. These work reasonably well for squirrels, and they cost about $6, $6 to $10, mattering when you buy them or whether you have a coupon or not. So something to think about. But a lot of times I can just push them open without even having to pull down on the bars. Like I said, I've done a few things. One, I've sanded down the little rib when they cut the bar here. It tends to make a little edge there, and the bar has to use a little bit more power. The other thing I've done is I put a slight curve in the bar so it's a little easier to have them go off. Now you want them so as they're moving them, it's going to go ahead and trap down just by sitting there, just in the movement. And you got to kind of work with them to make sure that doesn't happen. So just kind of keep that in mind. But they are very cheap, real easy to buy, a bunch of them, and they do fold flat. I mean, you can stack 5 or 6 of them just in the same distance as this guy here. And then just, I use zip ties to zip tie them down so they don't move and fall apart. Now the other nice thing about this over some of the other havahart traps that I have, this has the way to release them if you decide that that's not something you want to keep. So maybe it's a cat you have or whatever has got in there that you don't want in there. It's really easy to release this versus trying to hold it open from the front and things like that, which is kind of a pain sometimes. And especially if it's something that doesn't like you and kind of trying to tear you up. A big problem with this trap is if you look on this havahart, see this big plate right here? That protects your hands so you don't have whatever it is trying to bite you. And I've had possums come up and try to bite you in the hand, and they've actually stuck their face all the way through and have their sharp tines biting at you while you're trying to pick them up. So this particular one is best for squirrels, and always wear gloves because there is no protection there. So something to think about. Now these guys are the havahart traps. These are the best traps made on the market. They do cost a lot more than your Harbor Freight traps. Things I don't like. Well, biggest thing, they don't fold flat. They're like this, that's the way they are, and that's just how they are. They are made much, much better though. A lot more heavy duty materials, everything's really crimped well. No bends and welds and things like that. Everything's really done really hard. The other problem I have with this trap, on the back, there's no way to open it and let the animal out. So these are real more for dispatching animals, killing animals and doing them. So if you're practicing with squirrels around your house and things, definitely something that you're going to have a hard time with. Now the way these work is you have your pressure plate right here, runs up through the rod, hooks onto the top door here, and as they push down, so they'll walk in, you want to put your bait up in here. Now I would like this trap to be a little bit farther so they can kind of get in there. These work really good for squirrels. And what you're going to do is, we use crackers. You put a little cracker at the end with some peanut butter on it and put a little bit more cracker. Just take one cracker and split it up into like 2 or 3 pieces. And as they get up here, you don't want to put the bait at the end. You want to put it right here at the pressure plate. And you'll notice that it doesn't take much to get that guy in. There's still a little room. So even if you stuck the cracker right underneath the back pressure plate, it's not going to stop it from going off. So that's something to think about when you do it. Now, I actually literally almost put the cracker underneath that back pressure plate, so they have to kind of dig around it, and they set off that pressure plate and trap them in here. What's neat about this is, like I said, if you want to practice this with your family or your kids beforehand, you don't have to eat what's inside. You don't have to worry about killing something. So kind of a neat idea. And the way you set these guys This bar right here keeps it from being able to be opened back up by the animal. So you have to press the bar down. You pick up the door, you pull the door up, and you take the pressure bar, which is on the outside. The other thing I really like about these havahart traps is the pressure bar is on the outside. You push it forward, and it has a little hook right up here. And if, man, you want to come in here real quick. See that little hook right there is going to go onto that plate. I'm going to move it back and forth so you guys can kind of see that. Okay. And it's going to hook right on there. You want to make sure you set it nice and light, and you're going to have to mess with it until you find where that spot is. So it takes very little for that to go off. Now, this bigger trap here, these cost about $29, 20 bucks, somewhere in that area. If you get a coupon, they're really nice. Again, they fold flat, which is really nice. This has a really neat feature in the back where they have a double locking system for the back door. You're going to have this clip mechanism, which you hook on here. You pop it open, and then you take your pin and pull your pin all the way out so you can be away from it when the door opens. So if it's a bobcat or something like that, hopefully they'll run away, but sometimes they decide to stick around and kind of fight you. So it's a good idea to be able to kind of pull it away and get out of the way so it takes off. But that allows the whole door in the back to come open, so you're not having to sit there and mess with them while they're there. Okay, really big feature that I really like. Now, and you just sit there, hook them on there. Now I've done something, I put a bend in this. These normally come straight. I don't like it because if they end up pulling on them, I've had raccoons get in there and they've got feet and they'll mess with things and they'll pull things apart. I like this. I put a little hook in there, but like I said, you just tweak it up and it pops right out. So something to think about. And again, we've got the plate on top to protect your hand. Raccoons, possums, bobcats, they'll all try to get up in there and get you. Thing I don't like is the pressure bars rod here is on the inside, which makes it a little harder to use. Not the end of the world. This has multiple locking mechanisms on it I really like, which is you have to pull up here, push backwards, then we're going to sit there and pull up. We're going to take our pressure bar on the inside, and you got to kind of get it going first. We're going to pull the pressure bar over, and you got to kind of set it. Now these for the bobcats and the raccoons, rabbits, these work really well for. Cats, if you've got cats in here, not saying you're going to eat your cats, but if you're trying to get rid of cats, if they get kind of out of control, you know, all this. And these can be used really easy for raccoons, things like that, that may be just nuisance animals. I do not recommend trapping animals that you are not going to take very, very far away from you, because once you trap them, they tend to be very hard to trap again. Now, what I like about this particular trap is, see this big space behind? I like that I can sit here, and what I'll usually do for raccoons and things like that, I'll put an egg back here, in the back, halfway back here. I don't want it right up against here because I don't want it to be caught in the cage. I don't want it in the back to where they can pick at it and break the egg and get the egg out that way. And then I'll usually set an egg very at the front here, and that will tell them, okay, it's okay for you to be able to wrap around and get on it. It's not going to hurt you none. And then go ahead, they eat the first egg, and then they come in and get the second egg. I've caught lots of raccoons, possums, bobcats, all those kind of things in these traps. Raccoons, they're really easy to use. But your food is ready when you get there. So you decide, hey, look, oh, it's the neighbor's cat. We don't want to kill the neighbor's cat. They're good for mice. But if it's a raccoon, now we can go ahead and kill it and move on. And that's done many different ways. You can do all kinds of different ways. I don't like the ways a lot of people are saying you drowned them or you set them, leave them out in the sun until they kill themselves. I just dispatch them with a .22 caliber rifle or an air rifle if you're in an area like this where you can't. Now keep in mind, this is not something you should be practicing if in your area if you're in an urban environment. But end of the world type situation, you can do a lot with that. So kind of keep that in mind. Again, pressure plate idea. You want it so you can sit there. It's going to close down on them. They're going to be set there, ready to go. Usually they'll ball up, and they're not going to really try to tear themselves up too much in there. But you're not going to have them chew off their own leg to get out of the trap. You know, something to think about. Very easy to open. These guys, like I said, instead of the havahart one, you're going to spend about 90 bucks this size. These guys, you're going to spend about $20 to $25. They also make a dual door trap. I don't think the dual door traps are as important as, you know, some people like. But if you've got an area where you've got a big yard and they're running along the fence, a lot of times the dual door traps are nice because you can set them on both sides and they'll go off no matter what they do if they walk through the center of it. And a lot of rats and lots of animals kind of will travel along the fences. So just kind of keep in mind, dual dart traps are nice. You'll usually spend about $29 to $30 on one of those. So this is the black bear prepper, talking about you know, the differences of different traps we have out there for small animals, because you're not going to be getting the deer. Everybody's killed the deer right off the bat. You're going to be getting the raccoons and the rabbits and the small things that you can have in one meal and be done. So as always, have a great day, and feel free to like, subscribe, or leave comments in the bottom and tell us what you want to learn about next. We'll talk to you later.